Welcome to Pioneers of Insight, a movie for your ears around epic life stories.
What's up, man? I got coffee, I got dip.
Yeah, you all rigged up?
Today we deep dive the life story of Matt Griffin, a ramped up Army Ranger who returned to Afghanistan to make things right after the war. Okay, strap in, folks, and prepare to hear a story about redemption and the journey to find empathy inside and outside of war.
Dude, I dig your spot, man. That's a cool place.
This axe factory got some history. So it was built like in early 1900s, and they actually played both sides of the war.
You saw that last Star Wars?
Yes.
Dude, everybody is, man.
Matt Griffin, welcome to the Pioneers of Insight podcast. Stoked to have you, man.
Stoked to be here as well.
Stoked, right? That's a good word. You know, I consider if somebody pulls that out of the pocket right off the bat, that, all right, this could go well. So let's imagine there's a clone Griff. And this clone Griff has the exact same consciousness that you do. So as you're experiencing life, it's experiencing the same thing. What would that clone Griff see about how you show up each and every day to your life?
You show up ready to work. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I've got this big, I think 5 foot by 4 foot photo that I took climbing Mount Rainier with a team of veterans. And it's the most beautiful sunrise I've ever seen in my life. And the only way that I got there was by hard work, dedication, persistent, pushing every day. And like, that's the first thing I want to see every morning, because it shows you the good things in your life that comes from working hard consistently. And then that Griff would get up and he would go sit on his couch with a cup of coffee. He would meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. And then he'd immediately get into either a yoga workout or head to the gym to get a strength or balance workout in. And then he would come back, he would look at his finances, because you got to do well in order to do good. And so just making sure everything's there, in and on time. And then faith-based. I don't know if any of you guys are faith-based, but I like the His Utmost, My Highest. It's just a website with a daily devotional every day. And I'm not a Christian, but I really like the short messaging they have there every day about how you can show up, and do your best to represent the universal positivity that's out there.
All right, so I'm learning something about you already. First off, you're a principle-based man. I hear that when you say I show up to work every day. I hear a person that's driven and resilient enough to show up and do that every day, because I know I happen to have part of the story here. You're part of an organization that's up to pretty good things. I hear meditation. So I hear this like kind of self-care piece in there that I'll be interested in tracking, like where that started to show up and where you started to see some value in that. I hear a conscious person, because you're talking about turning to certain material for inspiration, and it's faith-based material, but you're also saying, well, I'm not necessarily a Christian, but I'm okay taking those messages and utilizing them in some positive way. And you also talked about, hiking up a mountain with vets. So I hear how maybe that connection with the veteran community might be part of your story that we'll track. Does that all sound right?
You're right on it, man, on the pin.
Here I hear resilient, driven, whole person. I hear, kind of a well-rounded person, conscious person. I'm curious where all that started to come into place. Was there a particular low point or a challenge where that maybe became a catalyst for you to move towards what we see today?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, man, take a breath.
Yeah. I'm a pretty stubborn person, so I bounced off the bottom more than once. I'm gonna back up here. Like, I was an only child from divorced parents who divorced really early.
Where are you at? Where'd you grow up?
So I bounced around. I was a military brat. My parents divorced in New York, and then I moved with my mom to Maryland, and then my dad got stationed in Germany, so I got to see him like once a year.
Oh, wow. What was he doing?
He was an armor officer. So he was just driving tanks around, doing the thing, like the Cold War thing in Europe.
Was he Army?
He was an Army guy, yeah. I grew up, not hanging out around a lot of people. just where my mom lived. Like we didn't have a lot of money. And so the only thing I could do was just like ride my bike, work out, hang out. I did it like I was a really poor student up until about junior high, just because really wasn't challenged by much. And then I got to be about 14 years old, and I was 14-year-old hormonal teenage Griff. And my mom was like, you got to go live with your dad. Mm-hmm. And so my dad retired from the military. I went out to Iowa to become a chiropractor. And so he was going to essentially medical school, and I really didn't see him much, but we had a really mature relationship. And he was like, look, man, you can do whatever you want. Just don't lie to me. Mm. That's our only rule. And like, so you got to play sports or work. That's it. One of the two. Mm-hmm. In Iowa, it is a fantastic place to be raised. Mm-hmm. There's good, kind, warm, loving people, and all they do is work hard. Mm-hmm. So that's where I picked that up. And then I, went all the way through. My dad was a West Point guy ever since I was, a young kid. All I wanted to be was an airborne ranger. Went to the academy, graduated, and then it was 2001 time frame, and then I went to special operations. And so,
well, let me take you back just a little bit. I'm sorry to run you slow. I'll take you right back. Yeah. So you're growing up in a family, a military family. And I've heard this challenge for other vets that grew up in military families. I didn't, but I've heard this before, that there's kind of this dilemma that you find yourself in. You're given a lot of freedom and space because of the realities of what that looks like. You're moving a lot, but you're also forced to make a lot of adjustments. And I hear that you're saying, well, I found myself kind of with a lot of free time, alone time. You're saying that maybe you didn't connect to the school thing. You took us to a place that, as you started to mature, you got a sense that, you got a sense of the value of hard work, but maybe the military is a good option. I'm interested in that. So you're growing up in this family where you're seeing both the challenges and the benefits of it. For Griff, what's showing up on his radar is the possibility of that becoming a career. And not just any career, you're choosing for some fucking reason. On Griff's table, there's the possibility that the special forces is out there for you. What's going on in your life where that became a possibility? Were there certain mentors where that started to come on the radar for you that looked like a possibility?
Yeah, the Ranger Regiment, like they kept poking into my life. Huh. I'll never forget it, man. It was like one of those things I could just close my eyes and I can smell the air. Freshman plebe year at West Point, Thursday before the Army-Navy game. They do some big pep rallies and everything else, and they do a military demonstration. It was on this football field. All of a sudden, the lights went black all over post. It was absolute darkness. Out of nowhere, this bird comes flying in over the top, minigun blazing, dropping brass. Fast ropes come out of the back. Rangers are sliding down that rope full of hate and discontent, grabbing up automatic weapons, just firing, and like out of the woods comes these two RSOBs, and like they're just on fire. And all I could think was like, these guys are so present, so focused, so aware, so switched on. Those are my people. I'm gonna go hang out with those guys. I mean, it's just like rolling with a pack of lions. And then throughout my time there, like I just had all these mentors out of the Ranger Regiment, and they were all people that I just naturally attracted to. They were, thoughtful, kind, intelligent leaders who were very driven and hardworking. And like, those are just the people that I wanted to hang out with. And then when I was in officer basic course, one of my mentors there, he was the Ranger Regimental Fire Support Officer. He just left the regiment. And he, pulled in all the top performers and for, pre-Ranger training. And I'll never forget, like September 11th that morning, him walking into the back of the class, shutting the door and saying, hey, everybody shut up, and like turning on the TV and watching the second plane fly into the towers. And it was like, you guys are going to war.
What do we have? We don't. It looks like a new large plume of smoke.
Only one time.
From that moment forward, it was like there was no other option other than special operation.
I asked you about, like what was the turning point? A turning point that you talked about is I hear a Griff that's open to being impressed by not just the hellfire of it, but you were tracking a couple things, and you're saying the present-centeredness, the confidence. You're pointing out to these other things that I'll kind of tease out as we go forward in your own story, why that's so important. And then you talk about when 9/11 hits, and I've been through this with a number of other vets. For you, there didn't appear to be any other option but to go towards it. What is it about you at that point in time where that appeared to you to be like no other option but to run towards it? Because I heard your background. You're raised in this place where you grew up in a culture that's exposed to the military. You reference, the kindness of hardworking people. I hear those influences, but there's an extra step that anybody has to take. What was it about you that you were like, there's no other option but to go forward towards this?
Maybe a little family history too. Like, great-grandfather fought in World War I.
America goes to war.
My grandfather left Jersey when he was 17 to go to Europe to be a tail gunner in an A-20 Havoc. Which is like those are the elite fighter pissed off bombers, 3 guys, pilot, bombardier, tail gunner. And they were going after the ball bearing factories and the critical bridges. And he flew 52 missions before he got shot down. And it's just like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a natural vibe or whatever it is. But when I see danger or attraction or something that needs to be corrected, I naturally gravitate toward it because I don't know, maybe I think I have the skills or the ability to make a positive change. But I've always been attracted toward that. Like, run to the sound of gunfire has always been like, okay, hey, we're going to go get in it. Like, that's it.
Well, that's an interesting thing for people that might not be familiar with the community to really listen to. And I'm hearing it show up for you. Perhaps I would put this term onto it. Where other people might see an invitation to run, you hear a call. And it's not something that it sounds like you're able to necessarily put your finger on, but you can reference the power of past stories that came through your family history, where you started to hear that call maybe earlier. Mm-hmm. Does that sound right?
Agreed.
Right? Because I've sat down with, now like being a therapist too, thousands of people. Somebody might run towards something and not be aware of why they're running towards it, right? Does this sound right?
I think it is, but like there's a present attraction to it. I don't know. Maybe people say, "Oh, it's because of the military," but I've always been one of those people who's been observant. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. You're always paying attention to the conditions, the weather, how everything's are changing around you. And I was just kind of raised, in that type of environment where.
Who did that for you?
It was my mom's brothers.
Okay.
And they started me out in hunting and fishing. And then when I got into high school, I got into wrestling. Right. And then, it was always, you want to get out on the mat. You want to wrestle the tougher guys. You want to go after the harder things. That's what makes you better. That's where you're present. That's where you're flowing, which we're going to get into later. But it's, those are the moments when I've realized that I can close my eyes and I can see those moments. You'll never forget them. They're imprinted on you. All the other moments when you're not there, you have a hard time recollecting. But all those moments when you're moving towards something like that, you can taste it, you can feel it, you can smell it forever. Those don't go away.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, I think you gave us a pretty clear window and where it was showing up. And I got to give you credit. And this often makes people uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway. You're talking about like early on in life, you're saying, well, if there's an opportunity to wrestle the most competitive person, you move towards it. No, not everybody does, but you did. So I got to give you credit for that. Like, right? You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
Because you've seen plenty of people do the opposite, but we're getting insight into who Matt Griffin is.
West Point, September 11th, 2001. Hey, I'm going to do this. All the guys I looked up to were all Rangers. Go to Ranger school, go straight through, get to my first unit. It was an amazing opportunity. It was the first striker company in the Army, and my commander at the time was Captain Brandon Tegmeyer, who's now the colonel of the regiment, Colonel Tegmeyer. One of the best leaders I've ever had in my entire life. I got honored to serve alongside of him, and we had a great time. And then, my focus was going to the regiment. As soon as I showed up first day, I was like, look, I'm going to do as good of a job here as I can for you, but as soon as I possibly can, I'm dropping my packet to go to the regiment. And I was fortunate enough to have a battalion commander, sergeant major, and company commander who were all former regiment guys. And they're like, yep, if you want to go, like, we'll support you and everything we do to get you there.
So it sounds like there wasn't a lot of resistance or tension before you went into the services. I even teased you into that place that you just went right by it. You're like, nah. No, it appears to be you were kind of lined up. I'm curious. Everything appears to be moving in the right direction. Where did your first crisis moment show up, if you have one?
It was at ROPE, so the Ranger Orientation Program. So it's the Officer and Senior Enlisted Selection Program for Regiment. Now it's a 3-week course, but back then it was a 2-week course. But the first 2 days, you sit in a room filling out bubbles, psych tests, IQ tests. You know, do you like purple or red? Do you ever feel rubber bands squeezing your head? You know, would you rather be a florist or a mechanic? All of those questions, and you're just answering them all the way. And then, you know, the next 10 days is airborne jumps, physical testing, teamwork, skills, and orientation. The whole time the psych is watching you. Like, you don't realize it, but they're watching you the whole time, and they're tracking all your stuff, and they're looking at all your tests. And the final interview, the final day, they schedule on their psychological evaluation. Like, literally right before you go, they do a psych eval. And they bring you into this little teeny tiny white room, 2 chairs, white table. I mean, it's all white, and the Ranger Regimental Psych sits down with you. And he opens up the packet, and he peers into the depths of your soul. That dude told me things about me that I wouldn't figure out for the next 10 years. And the one thing that he got me, he's like, you don't have empathy. And to be honest, I didn't even know what the word meant. And then his whole evaluation revolved around that. And I left that room feeling like a piece of shit. And I understand why, because I didn't have like a horrible life, but I didn't have it easy. And everywhere I got, I felt like I got there because I worked super hard. And if the reason why you're not getting ahead is because you're just not working hard, it's on you. And like, that was the mentality that I had at the time because of the context that I had as a person.
So that was kind of like a bomb drop moment, is what you're saying.
It shot a hole right through me. I didn't even know what it was. I had to leave there and like go look up what the word meant after, you know, like no. So, and then they get up, right? And I got this huge hole in me, and like, not even like this guy just, you know, made me feel like a horrible human. And then he walks into the board, and it's 4 senior NCOs from the regiment and 1 officer. And then you walk into this interview, and then he tells them how to shoot holes in you. So I had this huge hole in me, and I was already wounded. And then you go sit in a room in front of all these badass warriors, and they're questioning your empathy. Like, I'd gone, you know, top of my class in school, done really well at West Point, sailed through Ranger School, done really well in my first unit, and I crushed all of my testing that week. And then, like, I step into this room, and they literally put me down.
Here you are on the other side of that bomb drop moment. By the way, you don't have any empathy. You take it in, though. There's something about you that's like, whoa, you didn't just kind of be like, well, whatever. No, there was a grift that showed up in that moment that was like, oh, that matters and that hurts, which is an interesting thing. Meaning, like, here they are saying you don't have an emotional depth, but your response is to go further into this emotional spiral. What do you think of me saying that out loud? Like, how do you relate to that?
No, it's true. It's how I felt.
Yeah. So here they are saying you don't have empathy, but you're actually showing yourself that you have plenty of emotional depth and character because of what you're doing with it. But I hear you say on the other side of it, you're further exposed. So you got to go from that super, you know, difficult moment to a place where you got to play tough guy again.
There's a period of time in between when you get selected and you actually show up to your unit. So for me, it was about 6 weeks. So you fly home, you transition out of your unit, and you're driving around posts, and they have those words of the month that are always like stuck in the median, which they want people to concentrate on. And like, I kid you not, I drove onto post after coming home from rope, and the word of the month was empathy. And, you know, I looked up some definitions. I looked about it. Like, I think I understood the concept, but I really couldn't feel it. Get to the regiment, you know, we're there for a train up, and then we deploy to Afghanistan. And, you know, our whole thing, it was this really difficult mission. It's called Operation Winter Strike. It's one of the only 2 times in history when all 3 battalions in the regiment deployed on the same area. And our whole mission was to deny Al-Qaeda fighters winter safe havens at like 10,000 plus foot villages. So they sent us up there in the middle of winter to go run these guys down. And if you knew anybody in the regiment from that time, they'll say that was the worst deployment ever. The most physically intensive, most demanding. And I'll never forget, like, rolling out of the front gate and seeing Bagram, which is a pretty good town by Afghan standards. It was the poorest place I'd ever seen. 50, 60 kids around the front gate, begging, skinny, cold, no food, barely clothed. And you're like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for these kids. And like, that was the moment, like, holy shit, this is empathy. And then it got worse. Drove to Jabad, then we drove to Abad, then we drove to, now it's Fa Blessing. We lost Jay on that convoy going into that village, and then we went up into the mountains and we stayed there. Like, we were suffering, cold, miserable, feeling all these feelings, and the dawning moment comes. You go, holy crap, these people feel this every day. There's no escaping it. This is their reality. That's empathy, when you can feel the feelings of another and you come to the realization of the hardships of another that they're facing and the impossibility of them getting out of that negative pain and cycle.
Well, I also hear there's something unique about you in those moments where you're giving yourself permission to keep going there. So that's an integral part of empathy too, is giving yourself permission to feel the feelings of another person. So let me rewind you real quick so we can really make sense of this moment as you go forward in your life story. So I hear you come shooting out of your childhood, all lined up to go into the special forces, but you're saying when you got there, here's the psychological profiling that kind of pointed out maybe some of the consequences of growing up the way that you did. You were a little top heavy. You took on a message, a pretty powerful one and a good one by all means, which is work hard. You got a lot of personal freedom to do that and really connected to the message. But I'm hearing you saying, you point this out on the other side of this moment when you're introduced to the concept of empathy. You don't just kind of drive by it, which you had the opportunity to do. You slow down enough to really start the journey. And you point out this really interesting thing that I've heard in a lot of people's stories. The moment that you invest and you actually hear it and attend to it, the messages start showing up. So immediately thereafter, there's like this magical moment, like the gong gets struck. You're like, empathy. And you take us into this story. You're leaping to Afghanistan, where immediately you're shuttled into a reality which is demanding more empathy from you. You had the opportunity to turn away from it, but you went further into it. So let me ask you about that quality. If you were to have to name that, the ability to kind of give yourself permission, what was it about Griff at that time that you chose to kind of, take that in?
Candidly, it was hubris. I don't like being bad at anything.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's like, no, like, I'm going to learn this. Yeah. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to get the depths at it. I'm going to be the best at it. Like, if I'm going to get a challenge, if somebody tells me that I'm weak at something, then I'm going to practice it until I'm really good at it.
So this is good for the listeners. So you went in with ego. You're able to say that. And at the same time, you're still getting benefits, because I hear it, right? You're saying, yeah, I'm learning through it, but I entered in through hubris. I'm an achiever type. I'm an A. I'm a wolf. But I'm learning along the way is what I hear. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
Dude, yeah. All right. We got you. All right, so there you in there, basically in God bless those people, every one of them, and the place, but you're in a shitstorm, in a shithole, kind of, and you're being taken on this deep dive into empathy. Where does it start to make sense for you over there?
It doesn't.
Okay. Take me to the place where it starts to make sense.
That deployment was tough. The following deployment, we lost Pat. That was super tough. And we lost a lot of friends, and like, it was just challenging to see the conditions in which it happened and how it rolled out. Like, it was Pat Tillman, right? Or like how that thing rolled out, being there on the ground, watching like my best friend, my daughter's godfather, shot through the face, like RTO shot through the knee. My current business partner, Lee, was right there in the thick of it, like worrying about him, was my guy, and getting out there and seeing the ramifications and the rollout after the fact.
For the listeners that don't know, you're talking about a person that was kind of in the media. He was in the NFL. Pat took the leap from the NFL and went into it was the Rangers program.
It's the cover-up that shocked the nation, the death of Army Ranger and former NFL star Pat Tillman in Afghanistan.
I mean, I knew him. He was in second platoon. Like, everybody's just so busy. Like, oh, that's Pat. That's cool. He's doing his job. Like, nobody cares, right? Like, he's just a good person. Like, people are attracted to him, but like, you're just so busy focused on your job that like you don't lend any weight to that stuff.
I gotcha.
The ramifications after that, I have to say, there was a time in my life where I poured out my karma cup. My wife was pregnant with my first daughter. And after seeing, we lost Jay on the first one, Pat on the second one, seeing how that rolls out, then everything just ramped up. It just elevated. Like if I worked hard before, it just amplified. Like there is no way this is going to happen again to any of my guys, any of my team. Like we are going to be the most dominant, the most violent. We are going to roll through, and whatever comes in front of us, like we're going to go there, we're going to be successful, and everybody's going to come home, no matter what. Yeah, that was just challenging. Just like having those feelings, those emotions, those driving weight, and I'd say it's all driven by fear. Right? People make their decisions out of two things. One is love and one is fear, and this one was definitely out of fear. And like I knew that I could outwork that. Like there was no way around it. You can outwork it.
So you're leaning into this as an opportunity to get things right. And you're saying for you, what stands out the most to you is just acknowledging that like there's a lot of fear there of having not just to address the potential reality of that happening to you, but to people that you care about. So I also hear that kind of intertwined. Maybe you might not acknowledge this, but it's intertwined with that whole brotherhood thing too. And there's love there. But fear is your ultimate driver, is what you're saying. Yeah,
I love my wife, love my kids, but yeah, like we were going to go home. And then that third deployment was our time-sensitive target deployment. So we were the hammer force. If we found high-value targets, we'd go get in the helicopters and go get them. And that was a pretty aggressive deployment. And then my daughter was born September 11th while I was in Afghanistan. And then I, luckily we were at the tail end of a deployment. My commander's like, hey man, if you want to go home, and like found a way to get myself on a contractor bird and flew home and, took her home from the hospital. And my love for her was so immense. I couldn't imagine.
What changed? What would you say about that moment? What changed in you at that moment?
If the fear was bad before, it elevated. Like there was no way that I was not going to come home to her. 6-month break in between deployments. We actually got pregnant with our second daughter. So now we've got a young daughter that I barely knew, another one in the oven. And then we went to Iraq in 2005. And that was the Wild West. Like it was game on.
From that moment where you consider the bomb drop, everybody has one of those. It's like the key critical life event that shifts people onto a deeper path of learning. The empathy trip took you into Afghanistan. You're saying you're taking there's all these leaps that you're making. You're able to connect to their suffering. And at the same time, you're saying, I'm also having to amp up my response so I can keep the people that I care about safe and so I can come home. So there's this critical kind of contradiction that you're having to face as a human being in that time. More empathy, and you're becoming more maybe efficient as a warrior because you're doing what you need to do and learning. Well, how are you managing that at that time? Like, was it more go forward or was there pause moments?
No, that whole empathy thing went out the door. It was gone. Like, no. Everywhere we go, it speeds the violence and violence of action and overwhelming force. I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, like all the things that were like peeling into me.
Right.
Like everything that I was exposed to. And like at the time I thought I was doing what was right for my guys and myself, but realized like, we probably weren't doing the best things for ourselves as people in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
You just get exposed to so much pain and violence and, emotional struggle, but like you're just shut down. You're not feeling it at all because you got a job to do. Like that's just it. There's
locked
nothing.
in. You're
locked in.
You're locked
Yep.
in. So
no sharing the feelings of another human being. I could have honestly cared less at that point in time. Like you're a bad person. Your whole family is bad people. We're here for a reason. You deserve it. We're going to take you out of here. Like, let's go.
Matt, you're at this point in your life where for all the right reasons, right? Maybe you'll get a bigger perspective on what's right for you later, but for all the right reasons, you're locked in, but you're also talking to the consequences of that. Maybe you weren't able to see them at the time, and maybe you're able to put them in perspective now in a way that makes perfect sense. But the consequences I'm saying is you're not feeling the impact of what's going on. You're operating. You're hanging out with other master operators too. You're getting the job done. 2 young ones in your life now. Your dad, you got that reality. You're taking this leap into Iraq where you're talking about the intensity of just maybe the pace of combat's increasing. Was there a place where it started to make sense for you, where it started to slow down a bit and you started to pick up the pieces?
After that deployment from Iraq, my 5 years were up. Like I really didn't see the war ending. All we were catching was teenage kids, right? And as long as we're over there in uniforms and, people are giving birth, there's going to be an endless supply of fighters. They're cheap. They're easy. They're ever present. Like this is not ending. Like we're literally wrapping up high value kids. We weren't doing it right.
Was that adding frustration, or were you just like, I just got to get beyond this?
I just got to get beyond it. Like you give us a name and a face and an image, like we're going to go run them down. We're going to bring them back. We're going to be successful. Go to bed, wake up, work out, eat, repeat. Like,
yeah,
that's it, over and over and over again. There was no stopping it. Like we were on that train and it was going. And then I got out of the military. I took the first job offered to me. I was a home builder. And now I'm home. I got 2 kids in a tiny little apartment with my wife. I'm going to work, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. And I am like plummeting, just drinking a lot. Something wasn't right. And, all of those things that we had done, all of those images of like, Afghanistan and Iraq kept like flashing back, like all the kids screaming, all the women crying, like, picking up pieces of stuff you shouldn't be picking up. Like it's just over and over. They keep flashing back and like, no, I'm going to outwork it. I'm going to get up. I'm going to work out more. Like I'm going to go to work. I'm going to be the best at my job. I'm going to come home and then I'm going to drink myself to sleep. And just like not really knowing what was going on. And I have to say that really came down to like a really detrimental point in 2009 where like I wasn't a good dad. I wasn't a good husband. Like I wasn't doing the best at work.
Was that a confrontation, or was that something you were able to realize yourself?
That's something I was able to realize myself. There's enough signs around that, like you said in the beginning, like I tend to be a little observant. Like I recognize patterns.
Yep.
And just like, really understanding that, just the pattern, it just wasn't there. And it was never ending. It wasn't feeling good. Just putting on weight, never having good conversations with everybody. Professional relationships weren't going well. Personal relationships weren't going well. Like all of those things were just like coming down and just not being able to figure out what it was.
You got a pretty powerful trip, through the military that you're talking about. It's interesting that you had this empathy drop into it, right? Like you had this kind of beware. It's almost like, I don't want to get too woo-woo for everybody out there, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's almost like the universe gave you a message up front, like, part of your journey is about empathy. So you touch base with it, but then have to divorce yourself from it. And no judgment on this part. I totally get it. And I hope everybody on the show gets that. You do the best you can, but now you're on the other side of it. And you're saying in the transition, you're having to click into a new role. It's dad. It's 9 to 5er or 7 to 5er, work hard, do more of what you're good at, working hard, but you're no longer part of an elite unit.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer part of a tribe or a brotherhood, nor connected to that purpose. And you're in the role of husband and dad, and it's starting to get difficult. I hear you bring in drinking. This is pretty. I actually happened to work in the addiction industry before. This is part of a lot of that story. Is like, instead of turning outward, you only know this. Well, I'll figure it out, right? So you're like maybe turning to your own resources to figure it out, which maybe you're shutting down and caring for yourself in the best way possible. So there's Griff drinking to make it happen, and you're saying, I'm seeing the casualties along the way. You're still paying attention. So where did things start to shift? What did you do?
When the market crashed in 2008, I got picked up by a company that was doing remote site medical work. Mm-hmm. And so this is right when Obama transitioned to office. The contractor boom rose up in Afghanistan and Iraq. All these contractors are going. They needed clinics and doctors and medicine to support their operations because the U.S. government wasn't paying for it. And so I went to work for this company called Remote Medical International, and they specialized in providing medics and clinics and training to oil and gas companies, seismic research vessels, oil rigs, like, Antarctic research facilities, anywhere where you needed a doc in a difficult condition, they staffed and supplied those places with medicine.
Wow.
And the contractors needed medicine, and they didn't have anybody who spoke military, and all these government contractors are calling them. So they hired me to be the face of sales for the company to do that. So I was traveling all around the country. We had a motorhome with our family, and we'd tow my motorcycle behind it. I'd use that to go to meetings. And I was going to a meeting in DC, and I was getting off an off-ramp in solid traffic, and some guy doesn't want to be in traffic anymore. Cuts that little wedge off, because he's sitting in the far right-hand lane and doesn't want to be in traffic anymore. So he decides to hit the off-ramp. And the guy turns 90 degrees right in front of me as I'm shifting into second gear, and full on the brakes, stoppy. I go to avoid his car. I slide off the bike, and I slide underneath the semi-truck. And the semi-truck rolls right on top of me and drags me underneath the rear wheels, underneath the trailer. And he stops on top of me, on top of my legs. I'm literally ground into the pavement at this point in time. Luckily he had somebody riding shotgun. Guy hops out, sees me under the wheels, backs off me. I roll over on my back. I wiggle my toes. I bend my legs. I don't feel any crepitus, right? I'm going through the systems check.
Yep.
I just realized how close I was to being dead. It was a very Lawrence of Arabia moment. You go through all that and you come back and get killed by a bike.
You're referencing that as kind of a wake-up call, right? Because you're saying, on the other side of my service, I found myself disconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your best you can to manage all that stuff that you have to manage, right? And then here comes this event, and the event is you're about as close to death as you can be, and you've been close to death before.
Yeah, and is that the last memory I want my kids to have of me? Is the dad that was working super hard, aggro, drinking at night? Is that the image that I want to leave my kids with? Yeah. That's that low point where you come to those realizations, that could have been their memory of me.
I hear this coming full circle for you, empathy.
Yeah.
And empathy for the people that you care the most about. Probably that mean the most to you. You're really feeling their pain at that moment. And that's a different kind of take on the way that you've been looking at empathy in your life story.
So I came back from that, learned to, get up and walk again. And then a couple things happened. I was like, all right, if I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to get in really good shape. So I got into P90X, and, at the time, man, I was heavy, I was fat, I wasn't doing well. And so I was really, I was hurt too. Right. And
what was the damage, just out of curiosity? What ended up happening?
I didn't break anything.
Oh my God.
Not one, because I was concentrating on flexing and keeping myself really tense while I was underneath there. And then I just developed some really massive scar tissue on my IT band. I got a large hematoma in my leg where I had 2 liters of fluid in my thigh that would float between my knee and my hip, depending on how I was going. It was super painful a couple of months until that went away. It's so funny. It's the P90X yoga, I think day 5 is yoga.
The great thing about Yoga X is it's going to focus on your weak spot.
I hated stretching. It was never a part of my workout routine or life. That workout got me to puke faster than any workout I've ever done in my entire life. And then the next day I got up and like I wasn't sore anymore. And I was like, man, there must be something to this yoga, which then started into like a daily practice, which at the time I just thought was a good workout, but I really didn't understand what I was doing for my breath, for my attention, for my awareness. And then in early 2010, so about 6 months later, I got my dog, Geronimo. He's a wired-haired pointing Griffin. He's a Dutch hunting dog. We signed up for the rescue. I don't use guns anymore, or at least I'd given up guns when I got out of the military, and I moved over to archery hunting. And so I said, I'm not going to gun hunt the dog. And they said, well, we're never going to give you a dog then. All right, we'll just keep this on the list. And six months later, they called me, and they said, hey, we've got a dog in Oregon. He's gun shy. Would you want him? And I said, yep, we'll take him. We got him, and he was a like completely out of control 2-year-old German sport dog. Literally a month before I got hurt, my wife just bought me a brand new mountain bike because I love mountain biking. She's like, you need to take that dog out and just go run him. Just go get on your bike and just go pedal around. And I went up into the mountains behind my house and ran the dog around. I came back that afternoon and he was like the best dog ever. Like best thing ever. And she's like, well, you just got to keep doing that. And so I started mountain biking a lot. You know, where we live is in the mountains. And so no matter what you do, you're going uphill for the first 30 minutes to an hour. And in those moments of like physical brutality, pain, and breathing, all of those emotions, all of those things that I was dealing with just grinding through my head. And I was just like working them out. 30 to 40 miles an hour, nothing but the present, you and your dog out in the woods. And then I got down to the bottom. I was like, man, I feel great.
It's really interesting what you're talking about in terms of your evolution. Wake up call, you start to get back in touch with your physicality again, right? In addition to the physicality, here comes this kind of, it's almost like a sneaky piece. Here comes yoga. Full systems start to come online. The next step is here comes this another critical figure in your life. Here comes this animal that appears to be out of control, right? So to speak. You end up going on a little adventure with your dog. Your emotional self starts to come online again. Yep. So there you are on the other side of war. You're back in touch with your family. You're starting to come online again as a person. You got another key figure in your life, Geronimo. Where is your next step? Where do things start to make sense in the bigger purpose piece? Because I know where you're at now. You're doing Combat Flip-Flops. It's a fucking awesome organization. Excuse my language. I cuss a little bit. Where do you start to get a sense of where you might fit in terms of your relationship to the world?
So as soon as I could start like moving again and was healthy enough to travel, I went back to Afghanistan. We were chasing, some government contracts for the Afghan military, and there was a lot of contractors in Afghanistan that we were serving. There was a lot of zeros floating around those days. And I ended up at an Afghan military conference. At the time I was a young officer, right? And all these guys who show up at these conferences are all retired sergeant majors, and they're buddy with all the buyers because they've known them for years. And I'm this young officer and nobody's talking to me. And then across the way, there's another guy, long hair and a beard. Nobody's talking to him either. And he's like, hey, man. So we just started chatting it up. And he was a former Marine captain who was running a combat boot factory in Kabul. And it's really hard to find a good cup of coffee. It's Nescafe or nothing. Like coffee is a formative thing in life. And he's like, hey, man, I got a great espresso machine in my office. Why don't you come by tomorrow? I got up the next morning, got in the car, went over to the factory with another buddy of mine, and went there, and I saw hundreds of people working. It was unbelievable. And just sitting there and watching how they were taking illiterate, untrained guys off the street, cleaning them up, getting them a haircut, giving them a uniform, giving them a place to sleep, providing food, putting them in these rooms of sewing machines, and everything from how to thread the sewing machine to how to just sew a straight line, and then putting these guys through a program where then at the end of it, they were going to come out and they're going to be able to make combat boots for shoes. They're going to be cobblers, and they can make uniforms and all these other things. So they were providing this livelihood to so many people who had nothing before. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. All of those people that I saw that were suffering and cold and hungry and everything else, Now they have the ability to rectify that through hard work. Everybody just wants the ability to work hard and provide for their family. And like I was watching it happen on this factory floor, and after all the deployments and all the pain, all the suffering, all the loss, I was standing there and going, man, it might have actually been worth it. Like we as a country did something extremely positive for a community of people. And like it provided a lift off my heart.
Here's what I hear is like you had given all your energy to that fight, and here it comes back, and it comes into focus for you with this, seeing this opportunity of people being able to connect to a life of purpose through work. So there you are standing in this with this other, it sounds like this other kind of cavalier kind of figure, you know, there in Afghanistan in his factory, and you have this second wake-up call where the gears turn in already.
And so we're standing on the factory floor, we're in front of the injection molded boot line and the sample table, and there's thousands of pairs of boots laid behind me on the floor. And I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, hey, John, what are you going to make when the war ends? Like, what are you going to do? And he just looked at me, and without skipping a beat, he said, no, man, we're just going to shut it all down. All these people are going to go out of work. Nobody's going to want to buy anything in Afghanistan. And I went from absolute, like, you know, emotional connection, inspiration, to fucking fury. I was so mad. I was vibrating anger. Like, I was furious. Like, how are we going to ask all of these service members, all of these people, crush all of these families to create this temporary Band-Aid and then just abandon it? I was fucking mad, like mad. And in that moment of fury, I looked down on this table, and there's this combat boot sole with a flip-flop thong punched through it. And I'll give you a little bit of backstory on it. A lot of people don't know this, but we trained a 340,000 person police force and military in Afghanistan. Like, the US taxpayer funded that. And so obviously you're gonna need boots and uniforms and all these other things. And you know, you gotta wear combat boots if you're gonna be in the Army. That's what the Army looks like. You gotta wear boots because apparently you need boots to fight well. And Afghanistan's an Islamic country. So per Islam, you have to pray 5 times a day. So here we are taking these, or nearly 50% of the recruits are illiterate, never been in a formal training environment, never been in a school. We're expecting them to show up the training centers to be a military, having the same basic set of skills that US teenagers have when they join the military, like being able to read, being able to tie your shoes, like knowing how to wear a belt, like all of those things. We expect it, but it's not true. So here you have all of these young recruits who have never worn a pair of shoes with shoelaces on before. And now they have to take their combat boots on and off 5 times a day to pray. The military was losing tens of thousands of man hours every day because of shoelaces. And so John, being a creative dude, is like, well, I'm going to make a military looking flip-flop, so a culturally relevant piece of footwear, so these guys can wear this stuff in garrison, they can do their job, and then they can get back to work. Like, we're going to solve this problem. So John's a problem solver, like through and through. Yeah. And like, I was like, dude, it was ugly and cool. I was like, man, like, combat and flip-flop, the juxtaposition of the words, like to fight, to take a 180-degree stance change on an object while saying that both are still needed. Like, it's all like bouncing around in my head. The light bulb goes off, and I just look at John and I go, John, can I run with this? And he's like, yeah, man, sure, go ahead. I set it down, and I walked out of the factory. I got in my car, drove back to my Afghan hotel room, got on GoDaddy.com and looked up combatflipflops.com, and it was open. So I call my Ranger buddy. It's like 2:00 in the morning in LA at this time. And he answers. What's up? Because he's not sleeping either. Like a lot of guys, we don't sleep when we get back. I was like, hey man, I'm thinking about starting this business, combat flip-flops. We're going to make flip-flops and combat boot factories in Afghanistan. What do you think? Dude, I'm in. I was like, all right, cool. $2.99, combat flip-flops was ours. Got the Facebook page, got all that other stuff. And then we started. So it was Donald Lee, who was a guy, he was one of my fire supporters in the Rangers, myself. And then I'm getting healthy. My sister-in-law marries a guy named Andy. He's our president of our company now. We ended up becoming really good friends. And so the trio was together. And, you know, later on that year, we started designing footwear and selling stuff. And Andy, I'd gotten him on the mountain bike train as well. So now it's Geronimo, Andy, and I up in the woods. Now I'm building a bond with my brother, having a great time, hitting flow. We're coming up with all these ideas for the company. And it just took on a momentum of its own.
This is your light bulb moment. This is what we could call it your coming to Jesus moment, right? Like, meaning, I hear an interesting thing in your story. It was almost like you got this message, empathy, from the beginning. And then where it really started to make sense for you in life, where you walked through the gate, where your life really started to make sense, was this idea of serving people. And the way that you were able to do it was connecting empathically to the value of the people that you had to go to war with. So it was this ultimate empathy step. And the only way that you got there was showing up in that factory that day, right? It's like everything came full circuit for you in that moment. So flow was on the other side, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting moment for you. It sounds like new people are coming into your life in terms of relationships, new bonds are being created as well. Immediately you get some momentum. So you lock it in, you're on board. You're there for combat flip-flops. The idea is just sets, lights fire, and there's immediate momentum. Where are you at now, and what was the key to getting to where you're at now?
I'd have to say forgiveness. Like, yeah, it's like as healthy as I was feeling, as fun as the stuff was, like all that stuff was still dragging on back. Like, you know, you could go out and have a good mountain bike ride, still, you know, have a good business meeting, do all these other things, but as soon as you sit down on your couch, like all that shit flashes back at you again. And it was relentless, and it just never felt like it was overcomable, ever. Like no matter how good things were, as soon as you sat down and you were in those quiet moments, it all comes flooding back in. Yeah, there was a pretty close moment where it was all going to end. I just sat down and like, what am I supposed to learn from this? And that final like kind of moment, and a word like out of nowhere from the universe, whatever you call it, like the word I was not expecting to hear, in the way that I wasn't expecting to hear empathy a few years earlier, was forgiveness. You got to be able to forgive yourself. You got to be able to forgive others. And until you can grant forgiveness, you're never going to be able to move forward.
As the crow flies, as he walks and laughs, he tells the tide, trailing from our eyes. And if we live until we're long in the teeth, think of me, how I used to be. We could never stay forever, 'cause you know we're destined to go cold. It isn't over till it's over, and what's good is good as
So there you are at your moment of darkness. Just so I can speak directly to the issue. The ideas and thoughts of like putting an end to it all when suffering is great. Some people call that suicide, right? Some people call that like checking out, whatever. Meaning it becomes a reality in terms of a way out. And a lot of vets have been put in that situation. But the message that comes back is forgiveness. I got to give you credit again, though, because you're still paying attention, right? So there you are in this critical moment of suffering, but you're listening and you're being attentive to like, what do I really need to do for this all to work for the right reasons? So you come up with forgiveness. All right.
I don't think I came up with it.
No. That's what you ended. It's a good point. You ended up. Yeah, you ended up.
Yeah. It gave me like a significant pause. We struggle coming out of like this, Judeo-Christian society. Don't kill, don't lie, don't be mean, do all of these other things. And then we stick you through the military, through this grinder where we glorify violence, we glorify death, we glorify all of these other things. And then we pull you out of the machine and they say, okay, you can't do that anymore. Right. Well, are these not values of my culture? Like, are these not? And then you start to realize like, wow, man, I made a significant departure with the values that I was raised with. Went to the complete dark side, and now I'm left holding this bag of like shit. Like, what do I do with this? Right? Like, how do I get rid of it? The stink won't go away. And that really just comes with forgiveness, man. You're young, you're stupid, like you're doing what was best. Like you're doing like what society tells us to do. You're doing what your leaders tell you to do. And then they don't realize what they're doing to you in the long term and how much that hurts. And so you got to be able to extend forgiveness to yourself and to others in order to be able to move forward.
I also hear something in your journey that maybe other vets can be familiar with. You enter for the right reasons. You're caring at the beginning, but there's a consequence into the way that you're serving that ultimate goal. And that's the actions that you take. And, you know, you're a human being just like the rest of us. So on the other side of it, you're saying the challenge for you is making sense of all the actions and the behaviors. That was you that had to do that, right? So the ultimate answer for you is forgiveness. I hear Buddhists say it this way. They say, be compassionate.
Yeah.
Meaning like we find ourselves in situations, there's a bigger part of us besides just the person making the decision. There's all these other factors that we're, in terms of where we end up. Can we have compassion for ourselves?
Yeah. Well, you know what compassion is, right? It's empathy plus action. Like sympathy is just recognition. Empathy is feeling it. Compassion is recognizing it, feeling it, and then taking action against it.
Right.
Like you have to extend compassion to yourself. Otherwise you can't extend it to others.
Right. So there you are. You're the CEO or co-founder. Are you co-founder? Is that what you consider yourself?
Co-founder, CEO.
Co-founder, CEO of Combat Flip-Flops. You're moving forward with that. What's exciting you about where you're at now and what's coming up?
It's been 7 years now and people are really starting to finally pay attention to what we're doing. We got on Shark Tank. We did that. It was great. Like big user acquisition, like brought thousands of people over to the mission. It's been awesome. And so finally now we've got a financial institution who came on and like backed us. So now we can actually run at full speed, which is something like, you know, we've been, you know, in a truck in second gear, towing a trailer up a mountain pass, right? For the past 7 years is the way that it feels like. And like, just unhitched the trailer, put it in six, and like got a full tank of gas, and then we're mashing the hammer down. So if you really want to know what's most exciting to me, it's the fact that there's going to be little girls in Afghanistan that are going to school because some crazy dudes decided to make a flip-flops and start this company, and they're supported by thousands of like-minded people who want to extend empathy. They want to extend compassion, and they're going to do it with hard work and action, and we don't have to wait for some MBA elected official, some guy wearing stars in a uniform to tell you the right thing to do, because I think we've proven over the past 18 years, all of those guys have been wrong.
Let me lead you to the close here. But first I want to say, it doesn't sound crazy to me. It sounds like a resilient man that was attentive to the lesson of empathy, that had the resources to actually put the idea and insight into motion, the perseverance to end up at a point in time where you can not only just make it an anecdote about where you've been, you're able to give back to those people and to do something amazing for the community as well. Man, I fucking commend you. That is amazing what you're doing. So here's the exit question. Let's say you have 2 children, you said, right?
2 girls, yep.
2 girls. All right, so let's say it's Grandpa Griff. It's 30 years down the road. Let's say you're at a party for the growth of your company. Let's say you hit the $1 billion mark for Combat Flip-Flops. Well, your daughters show up to celebrate, and your daughters now have their own daughters, and they come up to you and they say, Grandpa, we've been having a hard time because at school people have been talking about success and we have no idea what it means. What would you tell your granddaughters?
That's a fantastic question. I just was at a conference and they brought us in to talk about the difference between purpose and mission. You know, everybody's trying to drive these purpose-driven companies and these mission-driven companies, and a lot of people just don't even understand what the words mean. So your purpose is a large, big, hairy, audacious goal that will take 100 years to solve. You will work to the end of your life and you will never see that come to fruition, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. Our purpose is to end armed conflict. The idea of trying to force your will upon somebody else with small fragments of metal and high explosives is fucking barbaric. It's old, it's antiquated. Like, we can get beyond that now. Like, there's no reason for it. Your mission is how the steps that you can take in your lifetime in order to move toward that purpose. So when you step out of this world, what success looks like is that you have driven on your mission the best that you can. And when you leave, there are other people that are modifying that mission and driving on that mission to fulfill that purpose. You have to leave it behind for others. I think that's what success looks like, is when you step out. Are people going to know it's the right thing to do? Are they going to follow behind you? Like, are they going to do what you started? And that's what I would think success looks like for my kids.
Matt Griffin, Griff, thanks for joining me on the show today. It's been an honor, man.
I feel the same way. It's been an honor to be here today as well.
All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to. This just helps put it in the hands of the people likely to get something out of it. If you'd like to dig a little deeper and see what we got cooking here at TUI Media, you can visit our website at tuimedia.com. Wishing you grace to fill your sails today. Stay great in the meantime, and I'll see you on the next Pioneers of Insight.
You know what compassion is, right? It's empathy plus action.